Hello everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. Hope you're doing well, and today I'll be giving my review of the series Squid Game, which is a newer series to be released on Netflix. Before diving into my thoughts on the show, please make sure you smash that like button, light up that fire button if you're watching over on Odyssey, and also make sure you subscribe to the channel with that bell notification turned on. That way you know every time a new video or live stream goes live on the channel. So, Squid Game is, of course, making a lot of waves right now as being one of the most popular shows in general, right? Not just for Netflix, but also it is being talked about on social media and being talked about all over the place, and I think for very good reason. Not going into too many spoilers at the very beginning of this review, I'll just talk about some of the things that I really loved about this series. For one, I think the writing is incredibly solid. As you're going from episode to episode, there's 9 episodes in total, you really just feel like everything is so very well connected from one episode to the next. The world that's being built, the world that's being developed of this game, where, again, starting out with 450 players, all of them trying to win a cash prize of up to billions of dollars, US dollars value at the very least, all trying to do this, and at the same time playing these games, which they find out very soon have very real-world ramifications, including if you lose the game, you die. And so it has been something that I think is probably not being talked about nearly as much, but the writing for this show truly is spectacular, and the fact that this was apparently written back in 2008, and it took about 11 years for the guy who wrote it and came up with it and developed it, it took about 11 years for him to actually get it greenlit by any studio, is kind of surprising, especially since when you think about all of the different movies and shows that have come out during that time. Obviously, that was still during the heyday of things like The Hunger Games, for instance. It's kind of interesting that they would not have jumped on something like this a little bit sooner. Obviously, we can find inspiration of more classic titles, things that predate even things like The Hunger Games, things like Battle Royale is the one that definitely comes to mind for me. But it's just kind of amazing to me that it took them that long to actually greenlight this project, and that it was Netflix of all companies to actually pick it up. And of course, I think they've got a very big winner on their hands here with this show because, again, the writing is spectacular because of all of these great connections. The characters that are being built up in this series also are all really solid. They all have really awesome, really interesting character backgrounds, and you dive further into those backgrounds and get to know just a little bit more about them as every episode goes on. You never really know exactly who is going to make it on into the next episode because of the fact that people are being, of course, killed in every single episode until you get to a point when there's only a few characters left. And I think it's just, again, very interesting concept nonetheless that I think is, once again, very much underrated and underappreciated, is just how well the writing is in this show. And of course, that is very much alongside the fantastic acting in this series. There's not a weak link among any of the actors in the show. I think that all of them do a phenomenal job here. So for those that don't know, this is a product of South Korea, which has really been on a roll the last several years, especially thinking about all of the really great film, especially things like Train to Busan, Peninsula, the sequel to Train to Busan, things, of course, like Parasite, which I know not everyone was a big fan of, but I actually was. And there's, again, been a huge influx of really great stuff coming out of South Korea, and I think that Squid Game as a series is absolutely on that list of fantastic properties that have come from South Korea, and having the actors especially on display here, I think, was another huge strength. Every single one of them delivered exactly what it is they needed to for these characters. Of course, the lead characters are definitely the strongest as far as their performances are concerned, but even some of the more supportive characters, you have almost like this mobster like character, for instance, who is featured throughout the show, and even for him, as not being necessarily one of the leads of the show, he again is able to give some really solid performances as being that bad guy that you again kind of understand a little bit more about where he comes from and what led him to this position, because all of them have one thing in common, and that's all of them have crippling debt. All of them have at some point either thought about selling rights to their life essentially away or have already done it, and so all of them are very similar, and yet they're all from different walks of life. They're all there for very different reasons, and I thought that was, again, a really important piece of it, not just a part of the writing, but also very much captured by the acting in the show. And so kudos to all of the actors for doing phenomenal work in this show overall. And of course, that requires a very steady hand in the director's chair. And so the directing on the show is also, I think, phenomenal as far as, being able to bring all of these pieces together, being able to have all these pieces of the puzzle brought together, I think was truly a phenomenal job. Also, whoever was the cinematographer for the show, whoever was actually responsible for all of the shots in the show, I think were truly phenomenal. Again, obviously, these were all directed and written by the same person every single episode, which is very rare. Obviously, when we think about modern-day TV shows, typically there are several seasons spanning so many different years, and typically when you have that, you'll have various writers and everything. But I'm not seeing anyone specifically listed, at least in the Wikipedia article here, about who was the cinematographer. But man, oh man, the cinematography for this show is also top-notch stuff. There's some really great stuff in the last episode, especially with the way that it works as far as the actual shifting of focus in that episode, right from one layer to the next. There's some really awesome slow fade-ins that happen from time to time in the show. Again, brilliant stuff going on here. So it's clear that everyone that they got to be involved with this project was exactly the right person for the job, whether it was obviously the writer and director who, of course, had full control over this, it seems, and did a phenomenal job bringing his vision to life, whether it was the actors that they brought in, the cinematographers, everything on that objective level just really delivers. Now, I think that you might have some people that will dislike this only because, and the only thing I can really think of is that this is just not the genre for them, that the type of content you're seeing with people dying and betraying each other and things like that will, obviously it's a little bit on the darker side because of that very reason. Not to say that there's no levity in the show, because there is, one of these, kind of, I guess you say, dark humor elements that exist throughout the show too. But I think that is going to be something where it's going to be more of a preference, more so than an objective flaw or an objective issue with the actual show itself. And so speaking just on that level, before going into any spoiler thoughts about the show itself, I'm going to go ahead and give the show an A+. Honestly, I very rarely give A+ for TV series, especially because normally it's the issue and problem that you have multiple seasons over multiple years and things like that. Whereas this one, it looks like, based on what we're seeing here, that it is going to be a standalone season. There's not been anything, at least not according to this article here, anything about a second season to this show. And it really ends in a point where if they did make a second season, I would be totally fine with that, because I think it leaves it in a position where you obviously have a lot of things that you can, speculate about, a lot of questions that you can ask, but you also don't necessarily need those questions answered, and I'm totally fine with that. However, if they were to announce a second season, I think there are a couple of things that they could absolutely pick up with and move on with in a second season to try and further develop this out. Obviously, it would be very different because of the direction they would have to go in, which is why I don't necessarily think that they will. But because of the massive success, Netflix could very well say, "Oh, we've got a massive hit on our hands. Let's try and monetize this to the best of our ability, and let's try and throw some money at him." So we'll see if the original creator is willing to do that. Again, just based on what we're seeing initially, it does not seem like that will be the case, but we'll have to, of course, wait and see. But a solid A+ for this series. Now, going into some spoilers. So again, spoiler warning here. I know that some people have not been as big of a fan of the ending of the show. Of course, the big reveal at the very end is that player number 1, the old man who the main character of the show connects with throughout the show and eventually beats in a game of marbles, having thought that he was cheating him by confusing him because he knew that he was suffering from some elements of dementia, or thought he was suffering from some elements of dementia. But we find out that the player number 1 is the actual mastermind behind it all, is the main person behind the game itself, bringing all of these people in and leading to the death of 455 people by the end of it. And we have this really great moment where the main character, comes to this realization and just freaks, has that moment of like, why are you doing this? Like, what is, and there's this really great speech given by the character where again the old man, where he explains, saying, you know what the similarity, you know what's similar between people who have too much money and people who have no money is life. They don't really know how to live life. And I thought that was a very interesting component, and also a very kind of true statement where when you look at the people at these opposite ends, there's actually a lot more similarities than you would think there to be. Just like in the show, when you have all of these people that are in similar financial situations, all of them are very similar, despite the fact that they're all from different times and eras and beliefs and backgrounds. And so I think that was, again, a part of the brilliant writing. And the show ends specifically with the main character who's on a plane, or about to go on a plane to go visit his daughter. He's finally living out the life, with the winnings that he has after having taken a year off, because obviously he felt guilt about the money that he had. But we know that at the very least, like, he's starting to live his life. But he also, right before he's getting on the plane, sees the guy that convinced him, that basically baited him into joining the game in the first place. He sees the guy talking with someone else, playing the same game that brought him in to the original game. And of course, that leads him to run over and try and stop him. He's not able to find him, and he finds the card, though, gets the number, calls the number, and then basically insinuates and threatens the company. And obviously the main guy, who was a subordinate to the old man, but the one that was really running the show with the black mask in the series, he talks on the phone saying, you don't want to do this, just get on the plane and just, let it be. And so he turns around. So again, it leaves open that possibility for the story to continue. And the reason why I would actually be open to a second season of the show is because not only could you dive into what that character is obviously feeling and going through, but also there's the question of, will we actually have the little kid, right, of the girl who was in the final three, will he actually commit to trying to find his mom, who is from North Korea, and they're trying to, one of the reasons why that woman was trying to get the money was to bring his mom back. So one could say that by leaving all of the money behind, that was, in the little suitcase, that was kind of implying that was probably going to happen. But the specific wording of the line he gives to the woman that he talks to is that this was the winnings that was earned by her son, by the son that of course in the final two had died. And so that was something that I thought was interesting, and they could have done a bit more with. Also, too, we don't really know what happened with the cop. We know the cop got shot and that he fell into the water, but then we couldn't see his body in the water at the very end. And so I think it's insinuated that the cop character dies, but also, too, we don't know if anything got sent out to the cops. We don't know if anything was retrieved or salvageable. So I think that there's a lot of stuff that they actually could do in a season 2, where maybe they do have a new set of people, right, with the game continuing on, but then it's also intermixed with this character from the first show, and maybe the cop character who turned out to be alive, or at least the information that the cops sent, maybe one or two pieces of the information, the photos and videos that he took, maybe at least one or two of them got out, to be able to try and fill those dots in and try and find where the game is and try and stop everything, the entire operation altogether. So there's a lot that they could do there that I think could be done well, but that's the big question. Can it be done well or not? And something tells me that might be why we haven't gotten, at least, again, according to this, any real talk of a season 2 as of this point, because again, this is something that was written back in 2008. So this seems like it's the baby of this guy. And obviously, I don't want to completely butcher his name, but it looks like it says Hwang Dong-kook. So hopefully I pronounced that somewhat correctly. So it sounds like, or at least my perception would be, that he is not all about trying to, bring this to the bank as for as long as he can, but instead was more focused on trying to tell a very well done, complete story. And if that is the case, obviously, kudos to you, good sir. And I hope that all of your future projects are as good as this one, and makes me actually want to check out other episodes or other things that you've done in the past as well. But I could see them doing a good job with the second season, but they would need to have this guy back, having him with full control, full writing, and giving him whatever resources he needs, because what he had was, I think, enough to again, this is a show that I would love to watch again. This is a show that I would love to own if it ever became available on physical media as well, because again, it's just a very well done product out of South Korea. So again, A+ for this show. And again, I'm kind of mixed on a sequel. I'm kind of mixed on a season 2, because if they did it right, if they did it well, I think that it could actually be really cool. But if they leave it where it is, I'm also kind of happy, asking questions and being left. We don't have a lot of shows nowadays where we're, left on purpose with questions that don't necessarily have answers to them, and it's fun to be able to kind of speculate with that kind of stuff. But what are your thoughts about Squid Game? Have you watched it? Do you have plans on watching it? Again, I would highly recommend it to watch it whenever way you can. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about the show in the comment section below. If you like this video, smash that like button, light up that fire button over on Odyssey. Also, a huge shout out to my locals supporters, Kara Tharp and Biffer the Hobbit. You guys are great. Have a wonderful day, everybody. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge shout out to all of my Patreon Subscribe Star and Locals members: Andrew Hoyle, Animation Commentator, Brandon, Brian P., Christopher Bowman, Don Bruno de la Mancha, Father Christopher Miller, hail to you, Father, Father Damian Cook, Garrett Searles, Harold Francis, Inflamed Wood, Jacob Juice, Jeffrey Toone, Joe Horn, Jonathan Carney, Gomer Kyle, 79, Laura, the Modern Major General's Story, Mike Jackson, Dion, Mad Mitch Dunaway, Mondo Spieler, Mr. Peabody, On to June, Orange Hat Reviews, Out of Step with Reality, Priscilla Hall, Rosetta Allen, Stan Andrian, Teresa Martin, Theodore Bendon, Tina Bojan, and Tina B., the Empress of the Universe. Thank you for being my Patreon members. And a huge shout out to my Subscribe Star members: The R, Fast Reaction, Nosferatu Gatsu, John B., Perpetual Punster, Mr. Roy, Glinzer, J. Alex McCarthy Jr., Dean Heist Slash, the new number 2, J-Rod the Beer Guru, and ZK-Man. Thank you very much for supporting me over on Subscribestar. And to my one Locals member, Robert Barnes, thank you for supporting me over on Locals. And if you want a name shouted out, or your name rather, shouted out at the end of every single live stream and video, please consider joining on one of those platforms, either Patreon, Subscribestar, or Locals. Links to that can be found in the description. Look at that top link especially. It's called the Willow link there. It'll give you links to all the social media platforms and also ways to support the channel. If you want to be an Army of Asgard level or above member, you can get access to giveaways that I do every single month. I give away 4Ks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. It is a lot of fun. Also, if you join at the Keeper of the Bifrost level, you get access to all of that. Plus, you get access to an exclusive podcast that I do with John the Flick Pick Flickinger. We have a lot of fun. We do that once or twice a month. And if you join at the Chosen of Valhalla level, you get all of that. Plus, in your first month, you get a t-shirt of your choice and send anywhere in the world. And also, you get to be featured on the channel once a month on the Chosen of Valhalla live stream, where we get to hang out and have a good time. So anyway, if any of that sounds good, check out that link in the top of the video as I mentioned. You guys are amazing and beautiful people. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.